everyone, it's Carol here at Oakhouse Journals. I've got a spare couple of hours this afternoon, so I thought I would head into my craft room and have a little bit of playtime and do one of my Margarete Miller collages. The assignment I'm going to do today is assignment number 15. I've got my lightweight piece of cardstock here to work on. I haven't drawn my usual 1 centimetre border around it as yet, but I'll do that before we get started. I've got my prompts here, so let me show you the pieces that I've pulled out to hit the prompts. The first one is a repeating pattern found in nature. In amongst my stash I've got this stamp, which is the Fibonacci spiral, and the stamp set is by Visible Image. The Fibonacci spiral and/or sequence is a famous pattern that shows up everywhere in nature. It's in flowers, it's in pine cones, it's in the weather, you find it in hurricanes, and you even find it in the galaxies in space. In trees, the Fibonacci begins as the tree grows and then spirals out as the tree gets larger and taller. It appears in flowers such as water lilies, honeysuckle, geraniums, carnations, primroses, in the seeds in sunflowers. You also find it in fruit. It's absolutely everywhere. It's in the spirals of a fern frond. You find it in seashells. So it is absolutely everywhere. So it's just fortuitous that I had this stamp in amongst my stash, and I thought I could make use of it today. The next prompt is ledger paper. So I've got this sheet. It's from a ledger that is French, as you can see, and I'm thinking I might make use of these titles here, or these dates rather. So let's pop that to one side. The third prompt is part of a product manual or instruction guide. Well, we bought a neck massager recently, and I just took a photocopy of the product guide or instructions, and this is all in German, so I'm going to be using that. The next prompt is thread or a piece of fabric. I've lifted out some sari silk. This lovely golden mustard colour is just gorgeous. Or this one. Now, I think because of my colour theme today, this is the one I'm going to be using. It's slightly finer than this one. It's certainly a heavier weight silk than this. This is almost verging on a chiffon silk, but it's slightly finer, so I think this might work better, plus also the colours I think will work better. But you can see against the background I've got here why I'm choosing these lovely warm colours, and I think it will give me a lovely pop of colour as well. The next prompt is a quote. Well, obviously because I'm using the Fibonacci sequence and spiral, I had to use a quote by Leonardo Fibonacci, the gentleman that discovered this. So I've got two quotes here that I've just printed out onto some vintage book page, and this was a blank page, as you can see. And the first one says, the Fibonacci sequence turns out to be the key to understanding how nature designs. So I thought I might use that. Or this one. Now this is absolutely lovely. If by chance I have omitted anything more or less proper or necessary, I beg forgiveness, since there is no one who is without fault and circumspect in all matters. And as I say, that was by Leonardo Fibonacci, but I just thought that was a lovely old-fashioned way or flowery way of saying I'm only human. So I just thought that was so amusing. So this is my preferred one, but if I need to have a smaller one, then I can use that. The last prompt, or the bonus prompt, is something stenciled. Now, I haven't lifted anything out for that as yet. I will do later on. If you watch me when I'm doing these collages, I like to try and get in all the prompts, including the bonus prompt, even though the bonus prompt is there for you to leave one of the other prompts out and swap it out with the bonus prompt. I like to use them all, as I've said, so I will try and get that in. That's certainly my intention. And finally, I have got these. Now, these are a recent purchase. As you can see, they are rub-on stickers by All and Create, and I thought it would be fun to use one of these on my piece today. And if I flip this over, that's the one I want to use. Quite bright, but I think it will work well with some of this sari silk on there, and it's really going to give me a pop of colour today. So First things first, I'm going to go away, draw my board around there, and I will rip up some of this ledger paper to see how this is going to fit on my page, and I will come back to you. So I've drawn my border all the way around my working piece of paper. I've taken my stamp out, and the lovely thing about these visible image stamps is they give you a little piece of perspex, which is a protector for your stamp, but also it's great for working out where you want to place your stamp and seeing if it works in one place or another. So I've lifted that out. I've ripped off this from the top, and I was also playing around with this bottom portion, but I don't like this red line. So what I've done is I have ripped the lower portion here away so that effectively this looked like that, but had the red line in between. So I've got both of those to play with. I've lifted out my rub-ons, and obviously I've got that. So originally what I thought I would do was to use this to create my background. It's just gorgeous colours. Then I was wondering about having this over to the left hand side, something like that. And then I had an idea that I would use this margin that I've left here and have that butted up to this line here, like that. And then use this and these lines here to just complete that line there and there. Maybe have my quote here, and then I obviously have to get in my stencil and the ribbon. The only thing that was giving me pause was that if I bring in my ribbon, and I was thinking maybe doing something like a ruffle, then I actually don't like how that looks. You've got a long piece there, a long piece here, and then you'd have your quote over the top, and that feels very disjointed to me. This is the piece that is giving me the difficulty, so I thought I would take that away and bring in this piece and make it background piece, have it centered there. I could obviously go over the top with my rub-ons, so I'm just very gently going to place this on top and hope it doesn't stick. And I could have this so that it's actually going off onto the white edging here and here. Then bring in this again, and then use my Fibonacci curl and have it on here so that it is center stage, and this becomes my focal element. And then from there I could have my quote either that way, or if I turn my spiral round the other way, I could have my quote going out that way. And then maybe if I pull it over a little bit more, I could use this down the left hand side, and I think that's going to be a better composition. I'm not just going to stamp this onto this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to emboss it, so I'm going to go away and do that now. I've used black embossing powder to emboss the Fibonacci spiral onto my product information, and I've trimmed it down a little bit so that I can have more of this background showing. My quote will be on here, but I'm actually wondering whether to go over the top of I'm actually wondering whether to go over the top of this as well. Lining up that line with this line, it might pull my piece too far over to this side, but we'll see. I could have that on there like that, but it looks lovely on the camera, but I'm wondering if it's going to be too busy. Let me put this back on and look at the camera again. That looks fabulous on there. That makes it stand out too much, which makes me wonder if I am better having this over the whole of my background piece, my ledger piece, and also the product manual. So I could line up that top line with that, and down the side here have my quote off the side there if I can fit it on, and have this over the top. I've got to get my fabric in and I've got to get some stenciling in. And you know, I'm liking that, so I'm going to go with that. Let me just have a quick look at how this is going to sit. So I'm going to just rip this down a little bit. So these were the original quotes I was going to use. They were way too big for what I wanted to do. So I went away and I reprinted them slightly smaller. So this is the preferred quote that I wanted to use, and I still think this is going to work out too big for my piece. This one is a much better size because I want it straddling this piece, half on, half off, and even this piece, but I may well need to move that ledger piece over more to the left hand side if I'm going to get that ruffle in. So out of the two, this one is working better, so I'm going to go with this one. So I printed it out again onto the vintage book page because I want this creamy sort of background. That's just moved. So I'm thinking that that's going to work on there. What I need to do now, before I can glue any of this in place and before I can go in with my remnant rubs, is to work out how my fabric is going to go on here. And as I've mentioned, I was thinking, I'm just going to break that off, I was thinking of doing a fabric ruffle down this left hand side. Now I'm liking this little piece here because it's smaller. So I'm going to go to my sewing machine and I'm going to have a go at creating a ruffle for down this side. So I've made the ruffle. I just put a piece of folded paper down the back to secure it as I was making the ruffle, and then stitched over it on my sewing machine. I probably will trim this down a little bit more. This is the layout I'm thinking of for having. As you can see, I've turned it round so that this heavy line that I wasn't too sure about is on the left hand side and will be hidden by this ruffle. And I'm thinking that I'll reduce it down to about here. This is going to go on here. I could go in with a stamp or something underneath that. Okay, I'm liking that, so I'm going to glue it down and go in with my rub-ons. So I've pulled all the backing off here and it was an absolute nightmare. The ledger paper was lifting badly, and as you can see it's stuck, but it's not too bad because it's a whole distressed look, and this will actually go down the left hand side here where the bulk of the damage was occurring. I've got some distress going on here, but I'm okay with that actually. It sort of blends in with how it should look. I don't think I can use any of that on there, but let's have a look and see if it will work. Don't think so, but we can try it. Oh yeah, actually it has worked. That's brilliant. So I've got a figure 9 here, so I'm going to try and use it up here as well and see if that will work. Yep, that has. A little bit of colour there so I can use that bit. There we go. We'll try and get some of these extra little portions onto the quote to give some colour on that so that it doesn't look so stark. I'm going to trim this down a little bit to get rid of some of this paper, so let's do that. I'm just going to look and see if I've got a stamp or something in that sort of shade to maybe build up a bit more of a collage around here. So give me a moment and I'll get my stamps out and just check through and see what I've got. As you can see, I've stitched my ruffle. It's not glued on or anything like that. I've trimmed the edge and it's ready to go on. But I just wanted to show you one or two things before I actually finish off with this. I've put a little stamp. Let's get rid of that thread. I've put a stamp up here, position 1, just peeping out just to break up the background a little bit. I've also put this one here because I think it kind of picks up this sort of shade. dotted around, and I need to cover this up. I think that blue is too much in your face. And also I've got a scrap of fabric here because I think this bottom one is too dark, so I'm going to glue that one on there like that. And then I've got this stamp here, and I thought that I would tuck it in behind here, something like that, and maybe just a little bit higher like that, just to kind of soften that blue a little bit. I don't need to have it completely covered. I think just like that will work. I've used a little bit of this sari silk here behind my quote, so I've got a piece there and a piece here, and you can just probably make out I've got a stamp in the background there and another one down here. So that is how I'm going to have it. Without those pieces of silk here and here, this just felt like it was blobbed on, and I didn't have any rule of three going on, and it just didn't feel right. In fact, looking at it now, it's not perfect, but it's how it's going to be, I'm afraid. So I'm just going to go ahead and glue these pieces in place. I still haven't managed to do anything using a stencil, which was the bonus prompt. So what I've decided to do is to go in with this stencil, which is another All and Create product. Use this Distress Crackle paint in Clear Rock Candy. I'm going to do a portion down here to see if I can add some texture in this area. It's very runny, so fingers crossed. Obviously I'm not looking for any sort of perfection with this, just get some clear dimension on here. So I've got some down at the bottom there. I'm going to do a little bit up in this area or up here. There we go, you should be able to just see it in that top corner up there, and in this area down here as well. So I'm just going to call it a day for today. Let me put the lid on my Distress Crackle paint because this now needs to dry. I could blast it with my heat gun, but I like to leave crackle paste to dry naturally. Let me bring in my prompts and go through them with you. So a repeating pattern found in nature. Well, that was my Fibonacci swirl ledger paper. In the background here, pretty much covered up, but you can see some of the writing underneath the remnant rubs. A part of a product manual or instruction guide. It's this white portion here, and that is the portion that I actually did the heat embossed Fibonacci spiral on. Thread or a piece of fabric, well, I made a ruffle down the side here, and I also used a couple of portions, one there and one here, to try and balance out the colour on my piece a little bit better. A quote, well, I did this smaller quote by Leonardo Fibonacci. The Fibonacci sequence turns out to be the key to understanding how nature designs. And the bonus prompt, something stencils, well, I've got my Distress Crackle paint, rock candy in this area here and down in this area there. So there we go, everybody, a very in-your-face and bright one for today, but I hope you like it. I did have to throw in some additional stamps, so I've got one here, one tucked under there, there's one in that corner there and another one down here, hopefully trying to add a bit more interest on this piece. So thank you very much for joining me as always. I'll leave you with some photos at the end, and I'll nip off now and go and wash my stencils. So until the next video, everybody, take care. Bye bye now.